Alright, so what fun. Minimum wage is back again with a bunch of people strawmanning and mischaracterizing arguments against it. And I want to talk about this graphic because I think it embodies the absurd nature of leftist arguments against those who are not for the minimum wage. But before that, I want to say to any libertarians or free marketers out there, when arguing about minimum wage, always remember to say that all things being equal, minimum wage will cause an increase in unemployment. I forget to do that all the time, and I should be better about it because the all things being equal part is an extremely important part of it. Because after all, the unemployment rate might not actually go up with an increase in minimum wage if consumer prices go up to offset the costs and if employers cut hours for everyone but hire a few more people. Those reactions have and will occur. So despite the effects of a minimum wage being far worse than simply paying 10 cents more for a Taco Bell order, as this absurd graphic suggests here, despite the effects being far worse, proponents of the minimum wage get to say, hey, see, you said unemployment would go up, but it didn't, and they would be right. They would just be ignoring the massive amounts of other undesirable consequences that it can inflict. Right, so one of the most famous studies and the most widely cited studies done on minimum wage is probably the Card-and-Kruger study done on Pennsylvania and New Jersey, where Jersey raised their minimum wage and Pennsylvania didn't. So they thought, hey, this is a great petri dish to study the effects of minimum wage. We can see if there's any significant impact in either state who are going down different roads. So they cold call hundreds of businesses and ask them a bunch of questions. How many people do you employ? Are you planning on hiring more? Were you planning on hiring more before the minimum wage? What do you pay them now? How is the minimum wage hike going to affect you? And so on and so forth. After the minimum wage was implemented, they didn't see some big spike in unemployment. Then economists collectively scratched their heads saying, you know, this doesn't make any sense. If you raise the price of something, you get less of it. So we should see less employment and therefore a higher unemployment rate. So what's going on here? Well, what was going on was that they forgot to mention the thing I mentioned before. They forgot the whole all things being equal part. Because years later, when payroll information became public, people looked into it to see if this was all true. Maybe minimum wage, an increase in it, doesn't really affect unemployment. But what they found out was that, oh, hours worked by any randomly sampled minimum wage employee dropped. More people were hired, but people were working far less, and the average amount of actual money received by workers significantly dropped, and prices for goods and services these businesses were selling did go up as well, so consumers suffered as well. And the consumers are almost always those very same laborers too. So this means that a worker before the minimum wage was working more, getting a bigger paycheck, and they were surrounded by lower prices. After the minimum wage increase was implemented, they, on average, lost about $200 a month, if I remember correctly, which is a decent chunk of change, especially more so back then. That's about $2,400 a year, with higher prices all around them to boot. So it's a double shot there. And that $2,400 a year they lost out on, that's more than enough money to buy a functional, decent used car. But now they can't get it anymore, which means the person selling the car doesn't get to sell it, which means the money they might have otherwise would have used to add an addition to their house, maybe, doesn't get done. So they're not hiring pipe fitters or carpenters or plumbers or electricians to do that. And all of those workers don't go out and do some sort of economic activity either, and it blossoms out from there. It doesn't just affect you going to Taco Bell needing to pay 10 cents more for a Crunch Wrap Supreme, whatever that is. I don't know. It sounds awesome, but whatever. So in this graphic here, whoever made this thing is failing to grasp two things on both sides of the coin. When it comes to both consumers and employers, it is completely disingenuous to ever say, which I've seen it said many times, that all we're asking for is $5 an hour more. Or maybe you'll just have to pay 10 cents more for a Crunch Wrap Supreme. But anyway, what are they forgetting here? It's something I've talked about before, and it's something we all know about. Even the person who made this graphic and the people who resonate with this graphic, they all know about this. That would be multiplication. Okay, so it isn't just $5 an hour. That is a downright dishonest and disingenuous way of putting it. It's $5 an hour multiplied by, let's say, 20 hours a week, multiplied by 52 weeks a year, which is $5,200 a year, multiplied again by however many minimum wage workers you have. So if you have 8 high school students working at your shop before they go to college or to a trade school or whatever, that is $41,600 a year you're spending with just a measly $5 an hour increase in the minimum wage. Why can't you afford that? Well, maybe because it's not really just $5. It's $41,000. That is the only way you should be looking at this. That is the only perspective you should have, because it's the only perspective that actually provides a hint at what the reality actually is. Any other way is disingenuous. The same thing applies with this ridiculous graphic. It isn't about something going up in price by only 50 cents or $1, which is more accurate than saying 10 cents, by the way, especially over a long enough timeline. And that has to do with inflation as well, but that's a story for another time. It's about, hey, that carton of eggs costs only 50 cents more, but you're buying 2 of them a week every week of the year. So that's actually $25 to $50 a year extra you're paying. Same goes for the pack of chicken thighs you're buying, and the fruits and vegetables you're buying, and the few pairs of shoes you might buy, and getting your tires rotated, and getting that new dress shirt, and on and on and on it goes. So again, it's totally disingenuous to put it this way, to say that, oh, it's just a small increase in the price. No, it's a small increase of the price of something that you might buy perhaps hundreds of times throughout the year. And it's not just one product, it's multiple products you might buy hundreds of times throughout the year, that just a small increase in the price actually ends up being a huge chunk of change that you're losing out on every year. Or a more accurate way to put it is your purchasing power decreases by a good deal over the course of an entire year. That, again, is the only perspective that actually gives you a sense of what the reality is. So again, it's totally disingenuous to put it this way. Because to sum it all up, what these people are doing are exactly the thing that Henry Hazlitt in Economics in One Lesson, one of the best books out there, I think everyone should read it, it was exactly what he said. People who advocate for things like this are only looking in the small scale and the short term. And this encapsulates that, because they're failing to realize that, like I said, 10 cents more for one item purchased one time, that's not reality. The reality is that people purchase multiple items every day or every week, multiple weeks throughout the year, and that adds up. The fact that that doesn't get through to them, I don't really know what to say about that. Hopefully at some point they realize it. Maybe it's a collapsitarian type of thing. Maybe that's coming whether we want it or not. We're just going to have to let them do what they want to do. And when it all fails, then maybe perhaps with that one extra piece of evidence on our side, and it's a piece of evidence that directly affects them, it's not something they just, read in the history book and then close the book and forget about it. It actually affected their life. Maybe then they'll start to say, well, you know what, maybe this central control telling everyone what the price of things are or what the price of things can't go below, maybe that's not the best way of doing things, even though it on the surface can look like some beneficial or benevolent action. But anyway, that's all for now. Like and subscribe, and take it easy.